Welcome to CEO Insights. I'm Marilyn de Guzman with investingnews.com. I'm speaking with Kyle Mehalek, mining engineer for Grande Portage Resources, which recently released results from an ore sorting test work at its new Amalga Gold Project in Alaska. Hi, Kyle.
Good morning.
Yes, good to have you. So maybe just to set the stage, can you maybe explain to our audience why you've utilized sensor-based ore sorting for this test work, and what are the benefits of this type of ore sorting process?
Yeah, so sensor-based ore sorting involves taking the rock coming out of the mine and placing it on a conveyor belt where each individual piece of rock can be scanned by a variety of different sensors to determine if it's gold-bearing ore material or if it's unmineralized waste material. And the sorter machine will then pass the rock over a bank of air nozzles. The pieces identified as waste get hit with a jet of compressed air that knocks them into a reject bin. And meanwhile, the rocks that the sensors identified as ore are allowed to fall into the product bin and then get sent to the processing facility.
So using that, maybe talk us through the highlights of the results of the recent ore sorting work that you've done at the new Amalga mine.
So we worked with Steiner, which is a major manufacturer of ore sorting equipment, and conducted test work using material core samples from the new Amalga project. These core samples contained a mix of both ore and waste material at the proportions that we would expect to see when mining some of the narrow, high-grade veins within the deposit. And the results really exceeded our expectations because the sorter machine was able to identify and reject nearly all of the waste rock that was mixed in with the ore. So the overall grade of the sample was boosted by about 120%. Going from roughly 6 grams per ton before sorting to about 13 grams per ton afterwards. And meanwhile, the waste material that was rejected assayed only at about a half gram of gold per ton. So clearly very little gold loss, and what was removed is certainly low-grade waste material containing very little metal.
Is that the ore sorting at this stage of your project, is that a normal, like a sort of traditional or conventional thing to do ore sorting at this stage of the project?
So at this stage, we are really looking at how to optimize our potential production. We have a conceptual mine plan that we assembled without using the ore sorting, but we really realized that with this type of deposit and our particular mine configuration with a direct ship setup, ore sorting could really have a lot of benefits by removing the material that has no value prior to sending it to an off-site processing facility.
The company's CEO, Ian Klassen, has described these results as game-changing. Can you talk us through why this is a game-changing for the company?
Yeah, because the new Amalga project strategy is to process the ore off-site utilizing an existing processing plant owned by a third party. And what the ore sorting does is, in our particular test work here, the results reduced the volume of the ore sample by 57% with very little loss of metal. So 57% less material that needs to be transported, and certainly a huge potential savings for the material transport and processing costs.
So let's talk about that. In your mine, your conceptual mine production plan, you're proposing a direct ship mine, which takes it to a third-party processing, as you've mentioned. Why does that make sense for this particular project as opposed to building your own processing facility on site?
So the new Amalga project has a really unique situation, which is that it's a very high-grade resource that's located near tidewater. Only a few kilometers away from the Pacific coast. And what that does is it creates the opportunity for very cost-effective barge transportation to a variety of potential existing processing facilities around the Pacific Rim. And the benefit there is really twofold. The first is that it's a major potential reduction in CapEx to get the project started because it avoids the need to build a brand new processing plant on the site. And then the second benefit is that it enables the project to avoid developing a tailings facility, because if there's no processing happening on site, it means no tailings need to be stored at the site. And that dramatically reduces the environmental footprint of the project by around 80% compared to a more conventional setup. And what it does is it really simplifies and de-risks the environmental review and permitting process that's necessary to undertake before construction can begin.
So maybe this is a good time to talk about sort of an overview of the project. What makes it compelling, and where do you go from here after this results?
Yeah, now that we have these results in hand, we're going to update our conceptual mine plan and production output estimates based on applying the ore sorter technology. And that'll give us a really truly optimized production plan that we can then take around and engage with various third-party processing facilities to determine which one would be the most favorable. And then once a facility is selected and an understanding of preliminary costs are in place, we can then move forward with preparing for a preliminary economic assessment for the overall project.
What's the timeline that you're looking at for when, or do you have sort of a target timeline for when you start production?
At this point in time, there's a lot of planning, engineering, and certainly environmental studies to do. So I will avoid stating a specific time frame, but what I will say is that we are currently getting started on a variety of baseline environmental studies concurrently happening with the engineering and the mine planning so that we can be ready to very expeditiously move through the regulatory process once we finalize details like where we're going to be sending the ore for processing. So because we're not processing on site and because it is such a very, very small footprint due to the lack of tailings storage, my expectation is that the environmental review process for this project is going to be much, much simpler than just about any other more conventional mining project that you'd see in this environment.
Great. We'll leave it at that. Thanks again, Kyle, for taking the time to speak with me today.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And thanks everyone for watching. Join us again next time for another edition of CEO Insights.